really
You can
quickly.
start recording too right away. Okay.
So
I'm the editor for it, so I'll be kind.
yeah,
I made sure to leave the mustache too.
Yeah,
by the
no,
way,
it looks
for
great.
the-
It looks great.
yeah, it does. It does
I
look
did
exceptional.
I did my 24-hour stream for charity, and so I let my customers vote on the facial hair configuration, and unfortunately, this is what they gave me. So you got to roll with the punches.
I think it works
actually kind
great.
of works.
It works.
Hello and welcome to Patch Notes Season
Yeah, he
3
just turns it on.
episode. It is like 4 or 5. I should have checked which episode we are on.
Yeah, I actually
But-
don't know either.
Yeah. That is how absorbed we are in the craft. We, labels. Who needs them? We'll find. You've seen the title of the video. We are here in unique form, I will say,
Yes.
because we have a very special guest. Again, this is Spino. That is Wolf Clock, but even more important than either of us.
Oh, come on now. Oh,
Greg
geez.
from Game Trade. Now, Greg, tell us a little bit about yourself, unless you want Wolf Clock to wax poetic about all of the great things he knows about you. It could be both.
He can talk about the old days. He can talk the old GameStop days. If
I can,
nothing
I
else, we
can.
can talk Call of Duty Midnights. We can talk whatever. It's been a
Yep.
long time. So I started a video game store 14 years ago called Game Trade. So I'm affectionately referred to as GameTradeDePere on most things. I worked for GameStop for 11 years. Loved what I did, just hated who I did it for.
Got it.
And eventually realized that, man, the people that are shopping here are not shopping here for GameStop's corporate policies, but instead for my customer service and my staff that we hired. So I thought,
Right.
I think if I go on my own, I think I can do it. And that was,
I
it'll be
did-
14 years in March.
I did change stores from the mall store to West Mason when you changed management over to
man.
that. I was like, oh, Greg's not here. I'm out of here.
That's amazing, man. Well, and I remember we talked about starting a gaming news website.
We did.
Called
Game
Psycho,
Psycho.
and
That's
that was
right.
circa
Oh my
2012,
God,
something like that. Like it was a long time ago. but
Well,
it was
as far as I know,
fantastic.
there isn't a currently active online platform called Game Psycho. So if you ever need to rehabilitate that for any reason,
Honestly,
in any aspect, there's
maybe.
still hope. But yeah, 14 years is impressive.
Thank you.
Dedication, and it does bring up to one thing I was thinking about coming into this conversation, and that was the importance of having a community and in-person interactions in gaming spaces. There are a lot of people growing up in gaming today who don't even realize that there was a time, I mean, maybe they could infer it, right? But they don't realize there was a time when you would have to wait in line for a midnight release. That there was a physical location you would go to actually purchase a physical copy of the game, rather than downloading it on Steam or going to whatever developer's website there is, logging into the Riot client and downloading from there. Like we are it's an ever increasingly digital form for our industry, the gaming industry, and as much as it seems like that ship has sailed in some ways, there are a lot of value adds that having a physical community can offer. And I'm just wondering if you could give us some insight into that.
Yeah, I think video games will always be community driven, whether the community is online or if it's in person. And the retro video games, like we specialize mostly in that. And one day everything will be digital. Like it's coming. There's no like halting the train. One day every console will not have a disk drive. It is the future. It's coming no matter how hard we fight it. It's coming.
Yep.
Maybe we can prolong it, but it's coming. But there's still a sort of like people want to go to a store and they want to pick up something. And people want to talk to people like me. I often joke that game store owners are like the barkeeps of the 21st century. People come in and what do you guys? What's the younger generation call it? Trauma dumping or whatever. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
So like people come in and they're just like, oh hey, I had a real bad day, and they just kind of dump on you, and you're like, well that's okay.
Right.
You're in a safe place here, and ultimately.
I've done this to you. I know I have.
Everybody has. It's par for the course.
Yeah.
But there is a sense of community there, and it's a sense of a lot of people are shunned or don't have anywhere else to go where this is okay. And I think even sometimes their parents don't understand it. And so we get a lot of people in that you could tell they don't have anywhere else to go to talk about this. And so there'll always be a need, I think, for a physical space for that stuff, for retro games anyway. I mean, the online space, but even tournaments, look at Smash Brother tournaments. People still get together with 40 tube TVs and, and 40 cubes and 160 controllers, and they slam.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is weird because with technology, I would have thought this would have died off a long time ago. But
so there was a time when even you had wondered whether this could still be like a successful enterprise.
Yeah, and it's tough because I love my PC, and which has been digital only for a good 10 years now, for the most part. And so you're like, well, even I buy digital only. I have Game Pass on PC. Yep. I'm essentially going against my core business, the thing that keeps me alive and with money in my pocket. So, but it's still kicking, and the retro market is a whole other beast because the collector market, with us getting into our disposable income phases in life, we're getting to a point where like we finally have the money that we want to buy the things we couldn't have as kids. And so now we're seeing people always rotating in. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. We have customers that, we've opened 14 years. There's customers I probably haven't seen in 10 years. And we had regulars when we first opened, and now we've rotated to different regulars. And so now you have a different pocket of regulars. In another 5 years, it'll probably be a totally different pocket of regulars again. And it's interesting. But it's always rotating. There's always somebody who wants to buy digital or buy physical and kind of keep it alive. And then we get somebody who goes, well, I'm having a kid, or I want to buy my first house. I'm selling the whole collection. Like, okay, so then you buy all that. And then there's always somebody who was like waiting in the wings for that collection to come in. And then they come in and buy it. And I don't see an end to that until video games no longer feel collectible. And I don't think that's coming anytime soon.
Well, especially with the retro games in particular still having that physical element to it. Like humans, as much as digital technology brings us convenience, there's still like that primal, like we need that physical type of reality, right? And so it's like, I think physical video games in that sense will always have at least the collector.
We're filling our cheeks with the chestnuts, they're just running around. It's just something you want to have. Yeah, I totally agree.
I feel like most of us all feel that disgust when we look at WALL-E. Like, the humans in WALL-E. Like, you've gone so far being no longer physical creatures that you're little stubby, and like having these physical locations gives us like a core part of our humanity still. Like it keys us into the kinds of physical interactions that are important. And you mentioning like the notion of somebody like trading in their collection upon moving, that makes me think of a kind of joy of discovery or serendipity that some places just don't offer. Like on maybe, I don't know if there's a shuffle option on my Steam store, but I don't really know of a way of just happening across something that I wouldn't have otherwise found online in quite the way that we can with physical collections in stock. Like if I go to
especially with algorithms now, the way that they're all programmed.
Yeah, you're drip fed everything.
Yeah,
exactly. Like if I go to a Barnes & Noble in Green Bay, Wisconsin, I know more or less the same. I don't do it as often, but I used to go to a lot of Barnes & Nobles in the philosophy section straight away. I still have that. I still have that interest. But whether it's in Green Bay or Atlanta or in Nashville or in New York, the same titles that are going to be in stock because Barnes & Noble knows what sells at every location.
Yeah.
And they know what publishers are big and what books they can print cheaply enough to keep stock everywhere. And there just isn't the feeling of walking in and finding something that you didn't plan on, or at least not nearly as much. Different at like a used bookstore where I never know what's going to be there, things that could have been out of print or I hadn't even heard of. That's the kind of joy that I'm imagining people can actually still get at a game trade.
Yeah, and it's funny because we talked about the algorithm a little bit. There's almost the same thing in a physical store like a Barnes & Noble like you're talking about because they're paid by companies to display end caps and face outs. Yep. So GameStop's the same way where like all their marketing you see, every poster up was paid for. They're almost in the advertising business more than they are in the retail video game business.
Even with the merchandise and stuff that they sell, the collector items and stuff, it's all what's the latest and greatest on the media right now that they're selling, whether it's Marvel, Disney, whatever.
I have seen pictures of them having Skibidi toilet merchandise.
Oh my God.
Which is... I know I'm old. I know I'm old, but like, it's a thing.
You're right. It does say something about the state of that business model now, where it has moved into like the content industry generally. instead of simply the bread and butter of gaming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I worked at GameStop from 2000 to 2011. Peak physical video gaming. So it was my first console that I launched when I was working there was the PS2. Okay. And I was there all the way through the launch. I left literally the day before the 3DS launched. I left the Saturday. It was my last day, and Sunday morning the 3DS launched. So I did all the prep work. I just wasn't there for it technically. And that was like peak collecting and peak physical media. It was awesome. And GameStop was king. There was nobody who could touch them. They bought FuncoLand, which was like their third largest competitor, and then they merged with EB Games. They bought EB Games as well, and then so they bought out all their competition. They had nobody to fight with, and they still couldn't pick the right path. And GameStop's a weird company. Like, not to go down to GameStop train, but like they're a weird company because they are successful. They don't look like it,
right?
Like they've got money in the bank. They've got, and not just the weird meme stock stuff, but like they've got money in the bank. They're doing okay.
Yeah.
They just need to pick a direction that's going to be the right direction because they've made a few missteps, and it's like if they make another misstep, who knows? But, So anyway.
Well, then a lot of meme bros are going to be broke. That's for sure.
Yes.
I've got a lot of friends that are a little sunk in that. It's rough.
I gotta
rough
tell
out
you,
there.
we had thought a little bit about it going into this, of like whether or not you had an opinion, or even like the desire to talk about something like how unpredictable or utterly predictable, if it had been, like the saga of recent GameStop had been. Like whether that is like, does a former insider / current insider in the industry have a different point of view on that whole thing than like I did, just watching and thinking, or wondering how it could have happened, trying to find video essays that would explain it to me and make sense of what seemed to me to be like a completely bass-ackward approach.
I was just watching it from the sidelines like anybody else, just unbelievable. And I remember when it kept going up, I kept thinking, like, there's no way. This is not sustainable. There's not, and I know people that bought it at 100. I know people that bought it at like 200, 300-ish. And I'm like, it was painful. Yeah. I remember the holiday before that March when it started taking off, it was down to about $2. And I remember thinking, well, it's about to be holiday. Their stock's going to at least go up to 10. I guess put a G in there.
Oh, nice.
And
wow.
I could.
Yeah.
I didn't. But I could have. And I thought, no, I hate these guys. No, I'm not doing it.
Right, I'm not supporting them.
But I could have, because they were so low anyway. And I was thinking about playing the quick game, like, it'll go up 5 times. Make a quick couple G's. Cool. Didn't do it, and then watched it go, and I was like, okay.
So
and
tragic.
Man, that's unbelievable. Yeah, I think I calculated at one time, and it was in the hundreds of thousands.
Yes.
Yeah, roughly somewhere up there, but
But do you know?
Can't win them all.
Do you know that you would have been the person to sell at the right time, or would you have been would you have entered a diamond hands phase? Right.
No, that's a great question. I probably would have sold out early. I'm usually an early dumper, so I probably would have sold out. If I had to guess the way it was moving, I probably would have been out around the $200 range.
Okay.
Like I would have just got out, and then I would have watched it go up to whatever. I think it was 800 or something like that for a little bit, and I'd have been like just shooting myself in the foot and just like, what am I doing? What did I do? But no, I probably would have got out really early. I'd have gotten really nervous. Yeah. I did a little bit of that with AMC. I'd bought some AMC stock that same holiday, and that I think went from $1 to 40. So I still did really well in that.
Yeah, that is big.
But nope.
Yeah, it's a mystery to everybody. Or not, just a shock.
But it was interesting though watching it, because I think that company was on a trajectory for failure.
Definitely.
And it was struggling, and everyone was betting against it. And then that kind of revived it.
Right.
That and COVID, honestly.
Right.
Well, that's why
enough,
you don't bet against gamers, because if we can turn something into a game, we are going to try to win.
Yep.
Yeah, or a meme. If gamers can make it into a
yes.
meme, there's a decent chance.
Right.
There's a decent chance it'll.
100%. What an interesting saga, though. It was incredible.
Yeah.
It was really interesting to watch. But
and I mean, deepfake value still thinks that there's room to grow. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in second saga.
Well, now their stock sits maybe around 30 or 40, I think now.
Yeah.
So which it was undervalued at 2. It was undervalued at 10. But it was just kind of like, why is it in the toilet? And obviously the short selling was keeping it in the toilet.
Right.
So it was interesting to watch. I don't know, people. The masses come together, the internet come together, and stick it to the man.
Right.
It
But
was
then
amazing.
The classic underdog story.
But like always, then the people get burned and
Yeah,
stuck in the
right.
Yeah.
I'm
well,
sure some
everyone
people
got scared.
Yeah,
right?
well,
They're
and
greedy.
yeah,
It's a
that
bit
was
of-
that was scary stuff.
Also,
yeah.
a bit of a Frankenstein sort of thing, where you have the power to create something, but not necessarily control it. Once it's out
True.
there, what is
Yeah.
going to happen? Is it just going to become a monster that wreaks havoc on the lives of those who cared so much?
Right.
You know. So GameStop was obviously something that very few of us saw coming, right? Are there like other examples of trends that you either didn't see coming that totally shocked you? You had thoughts about the other direction, and then suddenly something happens, and you're put in a state of surprise? Or are there like other trends in the gaming industry that maybe you did see coming that some of us, like an outsider, wouldn't have noticed? Like, are there recent trends that you can think of that either surprised you or that you can say that you saw coming?
I think, and this is a little bit older, but I think that the Twitch blowing up trend surprised me.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Because growing up with an older brother who never let me play and I always had to watch him play, like, I don't want to watch people play video games. I still don't like to watch people play video games. Yet there was just this that and YouTube just made this like where people don't have to play games anymore. And we get this odd sort of, people will come in and I will legitimately ask them, hey, did you play this game? And they're like, oh yeah, I played it. Well, I didn't play it, but I watched, this streamer play it and it was awesome. But they equate watching it be played to playing it.
Right.
Which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
As somebody who, I want to play everything. I don't like even to be things spoiled for me. I don't like to be told like what happens in a game. I just want to be like, no, let me play it. So to me, I always thought that was weird. And that was a trend that so many people now just watch people play video games, and that's super acceptable to them. And I'm like, that's cool. I don't yuck anyone's yum, but I'm just,
You a big Packer fan, right?
Yes.
Do you play football?
There you go.
Except
Hey,
for
that's a great point.
Yeah.
It's great. I don't think I'm talented enough to play football.
Well, and I think that's what comes down to it, because there's two types of streamers when it comes to video games, and that's ones that are entertaining because of their social skills. So whether they're either hilarious, they're very unpredictable, or they're just really good at being relatable. Or second, they've got skills that is just like you could never have in a game.
Yeah.
And you just want to see what that's like.
They have no personal skills whatsoever.
Yeah,
but,
right,
they're
right.
really good at
Right.
like Call
Right.
of Duty. Yeah.
Right,
No,
exactly.
and that is fair. And I actually watch every now and then I'll pick up on somebody and I'll watch like Call of Duty Warzone streamers.
Okay.
Because you're right, I'm watching somebody who's really good. And I'm mediocre at best.
Yeah.
Same with Rocket League. Like I love that game so much and I'm so bad at it. And the average is going up in talent and
Yeah,
I'm
of
not
course.
getting any better. So I'm like sinking in the mud. But watching people play it obviously so yeah, I get that. That makes a lot of sense actually. And then there are personalities of course too, which are almost more entertaining than the games are. Probably.
Absolutely,
So,
yeah.
I get that.
But
I get that.
This is like to the point of it being surprising. This is also something that it was hard to see coming for a lot of people who would have understood gaming as the kind of thing that is most exciting to do firsthand. Like before esports were really a thing, right?
Well,
Or at
Twitch
least
did come after esports really started.
Yeah, you're right.
You look at MLG with Halo was
That's true.
on national television before
Fair point.
streaming on the internet was
Yeah.
even a thing. Like was a subset of gamers that did want to see what the peak of human gamer is,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Before the internet made it so accessible. So
What was that? The old Nickelodeon TV show in the '90s that was the video game themed one. Do you guys remember that?
Oh,
God.
It was something. It
yes.
was something. Yeah, Nickelodeon. I never had cable growing up, but like it was something Nickelodeon. It was like Hidden Temple, something like that. Anyway, but like you played. I remember at the end, like there was like the shopping spree where they would run down the
Yeah,
aisles and grab
yeah.
all the video games they could, and like I think they stuck them to them like Velcro or something. And
Right.
so there were always. But you're right. There was always like it was always on the peak of busting out mainstream.
Yeah.
Like it was, and they've been trying for years. And then people like Jeff Keighley's been trying to bring it. He's been trying to bring video games to be like. He wants to turn into like Hollywood,
Yeah.
and I think that's kind of the wrong
Right.
direction. I just think it's too different.
Yeah.
But he's always been trying to add a legitimacy to it, which I do kind of respect because I feel like I've been fighting for that my whole life. Like I grew up playing video games, reading comic books, being a total nerd, and quite frankly, getting my butt kicked for it. and now it's like cool. Now
Yes.
everyone does it,
Yep.
which is great. I'm glad. But I always feel like even a couple years ago, I had an employee leave because their dad was like, well, I want you to get like a real job. I'm like, I mean, I pay him and he does work and he gets a paycheck. I mean, it's kind of a real job, you know, just because it's fun and it's video games. But to that parent, they couldn't equate a real job to something like video games. So even, you know, that stigma was still there. So I'm glad people are trying to make it legitimate, but I think we need to stop making it like Hollywood. Keep it its own thing. It's its own like glorious thing.
It is.
And even esports kind of are almost similar to that though too.
Yeah.
You know, like you
a
almost
lot
feel
of
like
people
they're
are trying to turn it into the NFL and the NBA, and it's just it's not.
And
it's
that's
just
part of the
not,
Blizzard
yeah.
disaster. Bobby Kotick like selling it to his NFL buddy friends as this is going to be the next NFL. Get in early.
Right.
Your expertise will help because you own a professional football team. And so that's part. You know, when expectations get that large, and then people are wanting it to be something completely different, then disappointment.
What it
almost
naturally
inevitable.
needs to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
well, and to be successful, it had to do what it was never capable of doing. Like it was never going to be that big, and that was what they set the bar at to be acceptable.
Yeah.
And so if your acceptable bar is here and it was never going to reach that, then of course you're like set yourself up to fail. And you know, that's
true.
But esports is around and it always will be now.
Oh,
because
yeah,
it's,
absolutely.
it's planted. It's got roots. You know, I think its growth is what comes down to how that's taken, which the Overwatch League, like, that shut down, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's done.
There's still Overwatch Esports, which is largely funded by Saudi money. That is, I used to be the biggest Overwatch fanboy, and now I kind of just, like, it is in my mental closet. I have just stowed it away. I wish everybody who is still involved in the Overwatch community the best of luck, and I hope they're becomes a different nation that is able to put as much money into it as Saudi Arabia is. But so on the note of, like, you know, we remember these old forms of video gaming or ways in which video gaming entered the popular culture, like with this Nickelodeon show, right? Like, I remember on Toonami there would be some segments where the avatar of Toonami would give game reviews.
Yeah.
And
there's G4 too.
Yeah.
Yes. All of these, you know, there are things that younger gamers won't remember that we have an idea of. Like, do you have a take on the role of, like, expertise in gaming, like the kind of experience you've developed over time that, you know, like you said you were with GameStop from what, 2000 to 2011? Like, are you better equipped to deal with the video game industry now because you've seen where it's been?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, sure. I would say I'm also just an unbelievable fan of it.
Yeah.
So like I besides it
Same
being
here, brother. Obviously,
yeah,
we're
of
doing
course,
a gaming
of
podcast.
Besides my career, I podcast occasionally about it. I did my 24-hour gaming marathon on Twitch for charity over the weekend. And like, so I love it. Everything I do revolves around video games. It's my work, it's my life, it's everything. I love it. I just, there's so many facets to it. So I'm also kind of like a student of it. And I love learning and I love teaching about it and stuff. And I think
You even had an era where you tried to make a video game too.
there was
really?
There was a small time, and I've got some ideas cranking. I still,
of course,
I'm always, what's that? I've got that manuscript I'm always working on.
Yeah,
I've got that video game I'm always
yeah.
working on.
Right. Same.
So yeah, like I want to make them. I want to play them. I want to review them. I just want to absorb it all.
Yes.
So I think there's something to be said about being like a student of the industry, but I also think that this industry has a lot of people. Oh gosh, how do you say this without insulting anybody? Like a lot of people that are they just don't get it. I don't know. It's like
They've got some ignorance to it.
a lot. Yeah,
because they didn't grow up with it, A, or B, the version of it that they're experiencing today is just, it's vastly different than the gaming industry that we grew up with.
Yeah, and it's
I
also
mean, mostly because of that physical digital, but
yeah, and I can
it's
equate
also
a little
because
bit.
of the way games are monetized nowadays too.
Yes, which might be why this next point I make might be why. But I feel like nowadays there's no room for error. Like everything's got to be perfect right out of the box.
Yeah.
Like everyone's so critical of everything, and like, but yet they release games in unfinished states all
Which
the
is
time.
insane.
Which is totally insane. Like I've been playing a lot of 7 Days to Die.
Okay.
That just released 1.0, so it's out of early access after I believe it's 12 or 13 years. 12 or 13 years it spent in early access.
Yeah.
You could buy it on a disc for PS4 and Xbox One in an alpha state. They literally call it alpha version, like whatever it is. And I'm like, so you could
Crazy,
physically
yeah.
buy a disc with an alpha on it. I love the game. It's fantastic. But so you've got that. But on the other side, you've got people who have no patience for any sort of failure or changing. And you've got this weird sort of, and it's not everybody, obviously, but you've got this contingent of people that almost want to see stuff fail.
Yes.
And so
Definitely.
like briefly touching on like the Concord thing.
Yes.
I wasn't
Oh,
interested in
God,
Concord.
yeah.
I didn't
No,
need
me
another
neither.
hero shooter. I was never going to play it. So I have no skin in the game. But there was an overwhelming amount of people rooting for that game to fail.
Yeah.
And so, which
Right.
I find mind-boggling. Same with the new Dragon Age that just dropped.
Yeah.
People were like, I can't wait. Like, they want BioWare to stumble and they want their games to suck. And I'm like, I don't understand that. Like, so you've got, like, I love the study of the industry, and yet on the flip side of that coin, there's so many people that are so ignorant to it and want it to be a mess. I don't know. It's the weirdest thing. And so to me, I try to spread like just positivity about it
Yeah.
because I just want to enjoy it,
Yeah.
and it's, I think the ultimate,
Oh, and have others enjoy it too.
yeah, it's the ultimate entertainment. I
It
mean,
is.
it is interactive. It's emotional. The storytelling they're doing in some of these games is just
Yeah.
as good as any movie you've ever
Yep.
seen. The artistic stuff is just as good as any indie film you've ever seen. I mean,
Yep.
it's right there, and yet people are like, you see a Steam review and it's like he's got 1,000 hours on file, gives it
Yeah.
a bad review and says
Yeah.
this game sucks. Like, you played it for 1,000
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
It was $5.
Was it great for 950 of those
Yeah.
hours, and then you just couldn't beat a boss, and you're mad, and you're taking it out in reviews? Yeah.
One guy spent 2 years making it. You bought it for $5. You played it for 1,000 hours, and you're mad because
Yeah.
and you gave it a thumbs down.
Yeah.
Like that sort of stuff.
I want my $5 back.
Be like, and then the first line is like, I love this game so much, but they changed something in a patch that I don't like it anymore.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of that. Like a lot of people rooting for failure, and that bums me out.
Can you remember like precedent for this before our like current online era, like maybe before social media, before there were such large headlines about these gaming companies? Do you remember a time when people would like come into GameStop in the 2000s and just hate on a developer and want like some new game to fail? Is it really a modern
Hate on
invention?
EA, I think, has always been a thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, and as divided as we kind of are, everyone wants to be on their team, and so there's always been the PlayStation versus Sega versus
Yeah,
Microsoft
true. That's
thing,
fair.
the
That's
Nintendo.
fair.
So that has been there, but I never really saw GameCube people coming in and being like, "Oh, Shadow of the Colossus on PS2, the game looks like farts. I don't want to play that." Like, well, I mean, no one said that, and then
Right.
PS2 fans weren't like dogging on Zelda games. They were most likely just being like, "Oh, can I get Zelda on PS2?" And
Right.
no. And then they'd probably buy a GameCube, So, but I don't remember a time, and that could be rose-colored glasses, honestly. Like maybe people were negative and crappy, and there was always the Battlefield versus Call of Duty, like
Yes.
that was going
Yes.
on all the time.
Yeah.
But then something like Halo would come out, and everyone just played it, And now really everyone pretty much just plays Call of Duty. I mean, Battlefield
For the most part, yeah.
It seems like Battlefield's been struggling.
Battlefield's last launch, like the 2042 launch, was such a disaster. And
Yeah.
it was already after a time where everyone had like unanimously,
Unanimously?
thank you,
Yeah, yeah.
had decided that EA was like one of the worst companies in the world. And then they just dropped this completely 80% finished
Just
game that
mess,
you can't
yeah.
even play a full match of.
Yep.
It was absolute
Yep.
disaster.
And that's the
So-
nail in the coffin there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and yet
it
they're,
lost a lot
they're
of
still
fans.
kicking. And I always say this, I even say this about GameStop because I have a friend who runs a game store who used to also work at GameStop. We very similar paths, almost the exact same time. And his store is in Ohio, and he just hates GameStop. But he does new games, he does pre-orders, which I don't do. We just
Okay.
deal in used and retro.
Yeah.
And he,
I
he's
mean,
just
is
like,
there any money in pre-orders? And
absolutely
Yeah, I
not.
didn't
There's
think so.
zero. There is zero money in that. The only good thing about it is that people will typically sell you games to buy those games.
Oh,
So you do
okay.
make money on the games it brings in, but I don't have that problem. I don't have a problem
Sure.
with people not bringing me stuff. In fact, we started closing on Mondays for the month of November so we can get caught up. We've been getting
Wow.
Really?
so much stuff in. It's
Insane.
unbelievable. Like
That's
October,
terrific news.
we did more than double we did last year October
Whoa.
in what we bought. I mean, it's
Really?
unbelievable.
Oh, and
It's
what you
unbelievable.
bought.
And normally October's kind of chill. And I always do my stream at the end of the month, and it's like it's my wedding anniversary, one of my employees' wedding anniversary. It's one of our employees' birthday. He always takes
Wow.
his vacation. So like all this stuff happens in October. Nice chill month. And then we had one guy sell his whole collection. It was about 15, 16K.
I did see that.
And that was nuts.
insane.
That is what I was working on before I came here. Actually, that's going live Wednesday morning.
Sick.
And so like that just like waves of awesomeness. And today's trades are tomorrow's profits. And
Yeah.
so like you get all that good stuff in today, you're gonna have a really good holiday, and like we're more stocked than we've ever been.
That's awesome.
But I forget where I was going, why I started talking about that. But yeah, so I don't know. It's just
Well, I think we got there through the pre-order route. I don't know if there's
Yes.
still meat there.
thank you. Yes. So I was talking about. Thank you very much. My brain's
Hey, that's why
doesn't work so good.
Oh, I'm just eating all this up,
so-
so you know it's still in my teeth. I can floss it.
So I always say, like, I don't want GameStop to go away. I want them to get better.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I talk about my business is an ecosystem. It is like we're one piece of the ecosystem. GameStop's a part of the ecosystem. Best Buy and Walmart are a part of the ecosystem. They bring in the new games. People buy from them.
Yep.
They eventually trade them into me, and I sell them to somebody else's used. Like we're all part of like the safari. And not that we don't take bites out of each other occasionally and hunt each other down, but for the most part, we're all in a habitat. And so I don't want them to go anywhere. I just want them to get better. It's kind of the same thing with EA. I don't want them to go away. I just want them to be better. I want them to treat their employees better. I want them to make better products.
Because they can make the best games on the market if they actually put their minds to it.
There's no
they
no
have
excuse
all the
for it.
resources in the
Yeah.
world.
Now, I will say on the flip side of that coin, one thing I think a lot of gamers fail to grasp as a concept is that video games are a business.
Yep.
100%. You know, esports too. You
Yeah,
know,
definitely.
I wish it ran on hopes and dreams, but it runs on cold hard cash. And so, you know, a lot of gamers are like, well, you know, EA has all this money. Why don't they make this little niche game for the 100 of us that want to play this? And you're
Right.
like, well, because it costs more to make it that you're going to make selling it. And
Yeah.
it sucks that that's how
Yeah.
it is. And anytime, you know, that's
But
the
the thing
downside.
is like, I personally, I don't expect those kind of games from EA. I don't want those kind of
Right.
games from EA. I want my Hollywood blockbusters from EA.
Okay, I like that.
You
yeah.
know what I mean? Because that's what they've evolved into.
You have realistic expectations.
That's probably true.
I think a lot of people lacking.
because you've been disappointed so often.
Right.
Well, yeah. I mean, there
Input.
was that whole era where Ubisoft, EA, Activision have just like completely, essentially lost my trust, right? And you know, they're the ones that really pushed the pre-order game, and they're the ones that reinforce like microtransactions and everything like that.
Yes.
So obviously, I have a distaste for that, but at the same time, they are one of the only companies in the world that can give us those groundbreaking, completely immersive, blockbuster style presentation experiences in the video game industry. So focus on that, but do it in a way that's still for the gamer, not for the stockholder, right? Because the stockholder will get paid if you do it for the
Yeah.
gamer.
If it's a good game.
That's a good point. You have to make it for the gamer still. You have to. But yeah. It's funny because EA should be almost like an incubator for incredibly talented people.
Sure.
They should be the ones finding the
Right.
people, hiring them, training them essentially.
Yeah.
Build them up to be super talented and then kind of let them go.
Right.
You know, and that's really and I think that's kind of what's happening. And then you get into the conversation about crunch and how tough the work is there. And all of a sudden you get these incredibly talented people, they get completely burned out.
Yeah.
So then you've got a whole industry of people who are like, they're leaving games. They're getting out of games to do other things
Right.
completely. And these are some of the people that brought us some of the best stuff we've ever played. And so
Right.
that's the other problem too, is that those companies, when they should be incubating a talent, and they're essentially burning the talent out.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you know, and every now and then you'll see like, oh, I left EA, and you know, three bigwigs will leave a company and form a new company.
Yep.
You know, famously like Weston Zampanella from
Respawn.
You know, from it started Respawn, when they left Infinity Ward.
Yep.
So like famously like that, and that was almost like a free agent signing. Like that was kind of
Yeah,
rad. Like
that
you
was
went
nice,
from
yeah.
like the Dodgers to the Yankees. You know, like this was crazy. And of course all the stories about how Activision was like spying on them before they left. But but yeah, so that was like super cool that like EA was like, hey, we're gonna take these two talented individuals, give them a whole studio, give them a team, give them a bunch of money, and like have them make a great game, which they did.
Yeah.
You know,
Titanfall.
and Titanfall 2 are incredible.
One of the best games.
And I'm not a big Apex Legends
No,
fan,
same.
but the game's good, and it makes EA money, and it's got
It
its
does.
own fan base, and
Right.
like good for them. You know, it
Yeah.
unfortunately is why we don't have Titanfall 3 probably, but
Yep,
maybe
it
if it's
definitely
successful.
is.
But Titanfall was really cool, and there was some fresh ideas there, and yeah. So you're right, they have the capabilities of building some of the best experiences, and you know.
Right.
Do you think gamers pay enough attention, or as much as they should, attention to like the Rockstar developers and where they're ending up, or is it just on like a time frame that doesn't make sense? Like, it as cool as it is for like an insider to understand when one person goes from Infinity Ward to the Respawn, right? Like, is it the kind of thing that could get more gamers more excited about the way that games develop? Is there any like sort of optimistic spirit that probably not? This is just something that some people can enjoy.
In my opinion, that would be like stagehands moving to a different production company.
Okay.
They're just never going to be in the spotlight, right?
Yeah, and we've come a long way. I mean, in the NES era, you just had publishers were the only companies on the box.
Right.
Now you have studios and you have,
True. Yeah.
That's a great
Hideo
point.
Kojima puts his name all over the box.
Well, I mean, he's a very unique case.
Yeah. But but I guess also to answer that question a little bit, I have to make a semi-controversial statement, which would be I don't think people realize what the average gamer is. I think a lot of people think the average gamer might be the people talking on Twitter about the new Call of Duty, that's not the average gamer.
No.
That is that's actually, I would say, the top 10% of like of people who understand the industry. The average gamer played Cyberpunk 2077 on a base PS4 and loved it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
After a couple patches.
Yes.
Not just, every time someone sells me a copy of that game, I ask how they played it. And like, oh, I played it on PS4, not even a PS4 Pro or a PS5. I played it on PS4. Oh, I loved it. Game was fantastic. And I'm like, I played it on a 3090, and like this game blew my mind. But you loved it on, essentially not that.
Right.
So the average gamer though is, I think, much less educated than people think. Now, I talk about that a lot. Like I have a friend who he does a lot of data analysis, and I've had him on my podcast before, and he struggles with the gaming industry because he's big into tech, and he's like, tech people typically understand what they're talking about. He's like, but I talk to, on Twitter, I'm talking with these gaming people, and they just don't understand video games at all. They don't understand the technology. I'm like, that's because I'm like, your bar for what you think the average gamer is much lower, as opposed to someone who's like the average TV tech junkie or sound, audiophile, whatever.
Right.
So
well, and then there's also the whole echo chamber thing that happens on Twitter and Facebook and all those, where it's just like, oh, you know what? His opinion is kind of making me feel excited to be mad about it too. You know what? I think I'm going to go take that over to X or to Blue Sky now, right? Whatever it is.
So one of the latest big shakeups was one of the heads, and I forget the name because I try to remember as much as I can, but I didn't remember. But one of the heads who was working on Wolverine, the new Insomniac game, they left to go work somewhere, I forget. I think maybe they started their own studio. They left and they moved the head of Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart to the head of Wolverine. Okay. And so you're like, oh, okay, cool. So it's like a director role, so it's no small thing, but it's someone who worked AAA is moving on to another AAA title.
Yep.
And I was reading the Facebook comments. I know it's my fault. I chose to do it. And I'm reading through, and just every other comment is, "Oh, this game's gonna suck. Oh, that's it. This game sucks." God. And it just like you're reading everyone's comments, like you don't know what that person even does.
Right. Yes.
You don't know what they did. You don't know how long they were there. You don't know like.
Yeah.
But to them, they just looked at, but a lot of it was Xbox people saying like, well, the PlayStation exclusive is going to suck. Yeah. And then, it's the weirdest.
Tribal.
Like, there's so much ignorance in the people that enjoy this hobby. It's weird. I feel like it's not as bad in other hobbies. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why gaming
you're right.
in general, it kind of attracts, and maybe it's because we're in it, and because we're inside the middle, we see everything.
Right.
But I don't know what it is, but it just feels like I follow sports, and there's a lot of ignorant football fans too, obviously. But it just feels like gaming for some reason has a huge gap of the people who are really into it and educated about it and the people that just enjoy it, which I guess is okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, people can enjoy it without having to know who the studios are. There's, I don't,
absolutely,
it doesn't bother me.
I don't know the developer for all the games I play.
Yeah.
I mean, I try to pay attention, I think, because I am so tightly woven into the gaming industry. Even though I don't do it as a full-time profession, I still live and breathe the video game industry. I'm always trying to get my tentacles in it somehow. So I try to, but even I don't know all the developers that make my games.
Well, and I say all the time, like, I love music. I listen to a lot of music. I love music. And then I'm thinking about some of the bands I like, and I'm like, I don't know any of the band members in that band. I know the band. I know not a single person. I don't even like. That's so weird, you know. Like, how can I say I love something this much and not at all put any effort into learning more about it. But of course, my brain is full. I've got like the game
and
stuff.
that's
My
the
brain is
thing.
completely full. I've got no room for musicians for like anything else. But
And sometimes you just want the beauty of the product, the finished piece, right? Like there are artworks I know that I don't know the painter of, and I don't think I feel. Maybe I feel bad. I don't know if I should feel bad. I don't know if
feel
we should
bad.
feel.
I don't know.
Yeah, I should.
Everyone on the internet wants you to.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Well, as much as, and that's the thing too, right? I think what people really love is they love propping things up on pedestals. And the only thing they love more than doing that is watching it fall off.
Yeah,
You know,
tearing it down. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I don't know. It's crazy to me. I just love loving things, man. I don't know. I don't know why it's got to be. Why we always have to criticize everything.
Speaking of loving things, let's change the tone, right? And talk about all the cool stuff you've been doing with these charity streams every year.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. Well, and thank you for watching too on Saturday.
Of course.
You know, I always say it, but it's really, really true. Even just watching, lurking in the background, like all that helps. You know, when I look down and I see, I mean, I get 40 to 60 people watching throughout the whole day. That's huge for me. Like if I just stream on a random day, it's like 5 to 10. So to get like 60 all day is amazing. And so thank you for that. But yeah, so my passion for like the last 7 or 8 years really has been trying to raise money for the Children's Hospital of Wisconsin. And so it's really cool. If you guys aren't familiar with it, there's the Children's Hospital Network, CMN, Children's Miracle Network. They created something called Extra Life. And Extra Life is like a portal that you sign up for, and it allows people like me to raise money for them. And it was really cool because it was focused on people who play games to heal kids. Like that's like their whole slogan.
Yeah.
And you go through their portal, you get like a dedicated page on their website that you can share links to, and people donate directly to it, and then they rank it all, and it's just amazing stuff, especially for
It's
people
like an
us.
OnlyFans for good deeds.
Yeah, exactly. And you know your money's going to a good place. And so every year I raise money for that. And lately, I'd say probably the last 4 or 5 years, I really put the store behind it. Because once the store was finally stable and like on its own, you know, you didn't have to worry every day about like making rent and stuff.
Right,
and you're like, okay,
right.
now I can kind of use the power to push forward.
Yeah.
And one thing I've done every year since 2016, I think was the first year, except 1 year, I somehow missed something. I don't know how, but I missed 1 year. I don't remember it. But I do a 24-hour stream. So just did one Saturday. I started at 7 a.m. and I went till 7, technically 6 a.m. because the clocks went backwards. I didn't do 25 hours, man. When I get to hour 24, I'm like, every time I look at the clock, like 1 minute's gone by. I'm like, this last hour will not end.
Oh my God.
So I did 24 hours though, and just raise awareness, you know, raise money
Was
for the
that your
kids.
first 24-hour stream then?
Nope, I've done it every year.
Every
for,
year.
Wow.
I think at least the last six or 7 years, probably.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
and it's weird because we don't really even raise that much money during the live stream. Like this year, we raised about $2,000 during the live
Nice.
stream, which was
Really?
awesome.
Yeah.
So far, we've raised about $12,000 though. I make the most money every year selling Saruji's chocolate bars, actually,
Really?
in the store. Yeah, like of all things, we have a box of Saruji's, man. We sell more of those than anything. But we do.
They are delicious.
They are so
killer.
good. We do raffles throughout the year, and then we do now we're doing live sales every other month. So like
Cool.
we do a Facebook live sale where it's a claim sale. You just put up some weird stuff, and all the money goes to the kids. And so it's been really great and kind of fulfilling. And like I feel like no one's gonna remember Game Trade, and you know when I'm dead and gone, like no one's gonna care. Like no one's gonna remember Game Trade, and that's fine. Actually, I have no problem with that. But I would want them to remember, like, I hope that maybe someone will remember the good that we did and put out into the community and stuff.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
that to me, that
Well,
legacy
and
is
the
a little more
people's
important.
lives that you're actually making a direct
true.
impact on.
Yeah.
They are going to take that through them, and that's going to transform their life, B, hopefully everyone that they affect, right? So it is a cascading effect. Even if you're not remembered like the individual,
Right.
your energy still.
And isn't this a little bit
continues.
like the developer point we're making, right? Like, do the developers go into making games because they want their name to be remembered, or is
Right.
it because they want to make something beautiful that outlasts them, that they can be proud of? And isn't that the same kind of joy that you can take, right? Like,
Yeah.
whether or not your name goes down, the good you did is what's important.
Yeah, and I don't really I don't want them to. I don't want one day to be like some park bench in DePere named after me or
Greg
something.
Johnson.
Like
It's happening now.
Game Trade Gregg's
You put
park
it out
bench.
in the universe.
You know, I don't need that because I'll be dead anyway. Who cares? Unless maybe
what if
unless
it
they
had
bury
like
me under
Mario
it.
pipes as like the legs
See,
on
that'd be
it?
cool.
See,
That'd be cool. You know,
yeah.
they could maybe bury me under it, and I could like actually. I told my wife this. What I want. Like do one of those like tree things, right? When you
Me
die,
too.
Yeah. Like, just bury me. I don't,
Dude,
you know,
I've
bury
been
me in a
feeling
tree.
that
You know,
too. That would be so.
I think that's cool, man. Like, there's something really philosophical about that, and kind of. But I'll tell you, since we're on this subject, I'll tell you a really quick kind of fun story, kind of sad, but then it gets fun. So I got to pull you down before I raise you up. You know, it's like a true good story. But so I was invited to visit the Children's Hospital a few months ago in Milwaukee. And the cool thing is we choose what Children's Hospital we play for. So every dollar that I raise goes to Children's Hospital of Wisconsin. It stays right here in our neighborhood, stays right here in our state.
Of course.
And so I went there and we toured the whole hospital, some really heavy stuff, some really sad stuff. You see the ER where they work on kids. You see rooms that, have protections for kids that are thinking about self-harm. And you see a lot of stuff. It's really like stuff you don't even think about. And it really weighs on you. And you get to a room where nurses and doctors aren't even allowed. Administrators are not allowed. The only people in there allowed are the kids and the people who run that room, they work for the hospital, but they're not doctors or nurses. Right. And these people, like, that room could be any one of our basements or any one of our living rooms. You walk in and it's like an oasis. I literally told them that. I'm like, you walk in and there's big screen TV, VR setup, a table with like D&D books. And I'm like, you were just in a hospital and you turned a corner and now you're in your living room.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Beautiful room. It was awesome. And so when we were there, they wanted to play some games with some kids, and we went to a different room for that, another arts and crafts kind of room. And we were in there and we were playing some Mario Kart, and they invited a couple kids down to play. So 4 people were playing, and I'm more of a people watcher. Yeah. I love watching people, like how weird we all are. And so I'm kind of just watching everybody. And then another kid comes in with his dad, and he's pulling his machine that's got 4 or 5 tubes going into him, and he's pulling this IV bag and all this other stuff. And he sits down, and it's almost like he just instantly just slumps over, and he's got his kind of eyes down on the floor, and he's not, he's having a bad day probably, rightfully so. He's where he's at, and all of a sudden it becomes like that race ends, and one of the guys who was playing goes, "Oh, hey, it's your turn," and he hands him a controller. And you would have thought it was like, and I know I'm dating myself with this reference, you would have thought it was Popeye eating a can of spinach. Like he grabbed the controller, his posture just went,
oh, it's on.
And he just started playing, and it was unbelievable. And so what I always say is like, that is the power of video games, and that's the magic that this industry can do. So I hate when I see like all that negative stuff, because there is so much good here, and there's so many good people and people doing good. I played some games during my live stream with a VTuber. Another thing I never saw coming, just for the one back to your point about things I never saw coming, the VTuber craze, but hey, cool. She is amazing, and she raises almost $30,000 a year for her children's hospital in, I think it's Philadelphia.
Nice.
And I just couldn't believe it. And she has a full-time job, and she's a charity VTuber. All she does is stream for charity. Every dollar she makes goes to that, and she gets like $30K a year that she gives. I mean, and so I tell my audience when we were playing games, like, you think what I do is impressive. We raise between $12,000 and $20,000 a year, which is no small feat. I'm very proud of that.
Oh yeah.
But I'm like, compared to what she crushes that. Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable. So there are good people out there doing good things in games, and so it's nice. They are out there. It seems few and far between these days, but maybe that's kind of everywhere. It feels like that sometimes.
But maybe we also focus on the negatives, right? Like there's a negative news bias generally, not just in
very
gaming.
true.
We focus on that stuff. Maybe gratitude is the lesson of this episode, or one of many. Yeah.
Well, I've been thinking about, I really want to do, like, I don't do my podcast really much anymore, but it was just kind of like a gaming news thing. And I would do it every week, and I would find whatever game stories there were out there. But then what you end up doing is all you're finding is this drama every week.
Right.
And like, it's all the bad
all
stuff.
controversy.
Yeah, and every now and then I remember like I had a segment at the end where I'd be like, hey, here's some uplifting news. And it was like once every 6 podcasts I could have an uplifting news story.
That's right.
And I probably could have looked harder for more, but I didn't.
Sure.
And so I want to, reconfigure that now. And actually, it's kind of why I stopped doing it, because I just felt like all I'm doing is just spewing negativity out. Yeah. And so then I thought, well, what if I just did a podcast called like the greatest games of all time? And all you do is just talk about good games.
Yes.
And that's it. Right. You don't. If a game comes out, and like you and me say we decide on a list of games and we pick one, we don't talk. If you say I don't like that game and I say I do, we don't talk about it then.
Right.
We don't talk bad. Just sending positive vibes
that's
out. I think we a little bit more of that in the world.
A really tragic thing is that we had an episode that was very similar to that got corrupted.
It did. Maybe it was our finale on season 2.
We should rehabilitate that idea. We should do something, and maybe we'll invite you back, because Aaron, Vindi is not here right now. Vindi.
Yeah, hey, let's all have a moment of silence for the great Vindi. He's not dead.
No, he's
just really sick.
He's just vomiting. Yeah.
Poor fella.
Yeah. But he's here with you all,
yes.
just as you are here with us.
Toast to Vindi. Wish he could be here.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
But yeah, definitely. It was really cool. We went over so Aaron found this aggregated list, which was put together by this data scientist of actually going through like all of the review scores like of all time.
Okay.
And actually making a list of what the actual data backed best video games of all time was. And it was like 200 long. We went through, I think, the top 50.
Yeah.
I think I did see this list. How long ago was this?
It was on Reddit like months ago.
Okay, I feel like I feel
Yeah.
as vaguely familiar with this.
So
yes.
we went through
so.
it, and Aaron was listing them off one by one, and we would see if it was surprising or not.
And
or
Forrest
whatever.
played more than half, right?
Oh, it was like close to 80%.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was
Amazing.
I mean, you'd probably be at like 95%.
I would love
honestly.
this. I should look at that list and
Yeah.
see. Because I feel like someone did an article about it. Because I feel like there was a moment where my staff, we were all at the computer and they were like scrolling through the top 100 games of all time or something based on that. I feel like I definitely remember something like that.
Yeah, it was great. But
yeah.
it's just like every game that was brought up, you bring back the memories when you've experienced it, and it was just like, there were so many reasons why that game was so awesome. It was just so cool to go through that. I really wish that video wasn't corrupt.
Me too.
It was so
Me too.
good.
Oh, no,
that was
well-
our best ever.
Oh, like you're saying, like it actually, like the file corrupted
Yeah.
after you
Yeah,
recorded it.
after we
I thought you were
recorded
gonna say
it.
something like, we started talking bad about the games, and
Oh,
so we
no.
corrupted the conversation.
No,
but no, you're like
absolutely.
literally
No, it was
the
literal.
file.
The file
Yeah.
was. No one will ever see it. So that's why we're
That's our
thinking we should
special
do it again.
experience. Yeah, we have to do something like it to just match that high.
Maybe we could be a guest on your podcast when you
I
revive it.
totally should, especially because that's what I want to do. Is I want to just get a bunch of people together. We come up with a list. Like I'll message you sometime and say, "What are your top 10 games?" And I'll pick 10 games, and we'll see
Yeah.
what matches on the list. And
Let's
then eventually
do
just
it.
pick one, and then you play it a little bit. You get like a week or two, like a book club type thing.
Oh
and then,
my God, yeah,
and
that'd
then you
be
just
fun.
Oh, yeah,
you talk
for
about
sure,
it again.
for
And then
sure.
if you play it and you go, "Ooh, man, it was all about nostalgia. This game sucks." And you're like, "Okay, we won't talk about that then, because we're not here to like
Right, we don't want to
crap
dog
on
on
games.
Yeah.
We want positive vibes.
Right.
But I don't know. Maybe that's just me getting older too. I just feel like
Well,
there's so
that's-
much. Everything's negative.
Like you said,
know?
it's just like there's so much negativity out there. It's like guys like us, honestly, and this is not to toot my own horn or anything. It's almost like a responsibility. It's like we have the fortitude and just the know-how to stay positive in times that are tough, right? And it's just like if we can't be a beacon of hope and positivity for people, like who's going to be?
Yeah.
So, it's just like,
Yeah.
why wouldn't we? Right?
I like that a lot. I that's one thing I say a lot. Like it's the old Spider-Man adage, like with great power comes great responsibility. But also think of just those who can should.
Yes.
And that's how I've always felt. And like I didn't always have that capability. Like when I first opened Game Trade, I was
Right.
like, "Hey man, I gotta sell games today to make rent tomorrow," and that's how it was for. And then I had to save up enough money to pay my taxes, and then I was broke again for another 6 months, and I was using like 2014's profits to pay 2013's taxes, and like you're never catching up, and you're just like, man, I'm just chasing all day. And then you get to a point where you are good, and then once you get there, it's like, okay, now I have the capabilities. What can we do?
Yeah,
What can we do
right.
to help and to And I always say this too. I love my customers, and I feel like my philosophy was always you take care of them and they'll take care of you back.
Yep.
And I have no scientific data to back that up. That was just the hunch. That was the feeling. And it worked ultimately, but it was. Put good out into the community, and that good will come back to you. And I really believe that. And I'm not a karma guy. I'm not I'm not really, a believer in much of that sort of stuff. But I just feel like that's just like you put positive stuff into the world and the environment. You help somebody, they remember that, and maybe they help somebody else, or maybe they come back and help you. And a lot of the people that sell me collections were customers of mine for the last 10 years.
Oh, yeah,
And
I
so
bet.
and so that's a whole other thing too. Like that's just more of a good service thing. But we gave them good service, and then they came back to us. And I think. My friend in Ohio, I think he calls them boomerangs. And he's like, yeah, you get people who bought from you, but then they'll sell to you, and these are boomerang customers. And
Boomerang warehouses.
yeah. But yeah, so I do believe a little bit in that, like put some positive stuff out in the world, and hopefully that comes back to you. And even if it doesn't, that's not why you're doing it.
Yeah, right.
You just can't get bummed out if bad stuff happens to you, because it's gonna.
Well, you're going
I
to
mean,
get bummed
you
out.
know.
It's how you bounce back that matters.
Yes.
Right. Well, every good story needs drama. Every good story needs a low point. You need to hit that struggle. Overcoming the struggle is, but and then it's hard. Like I think of that, and then I think of the kids in the hospital, and I really think like, well, the worst thing that happens to me isn't nearly as bad as the stuff that happens to them,
Right.
and so and the stuff that the kids have to go through. I mean, one of the places we went, like there's babies in rooms that haven't been outside haven't seen the sun. You know, it's really, really humbling stuff. And so you think like on your worst day, the worst thing that happened to you was that like a couple years, like a year and a half ago, they shut down Rumbleverse, which was like my favorite game. The worst thing that happened to me that month.
Right.
It's nothing compared to what they go through. You know, so sometimes that's perspective, and it doesn't mean though that you're not allowed to feel negative, and, your feelings are valid, and if you're struggling, you're allowed to struggle.
Yeah.
But you know, sometimes it's easy to look at something else and say, well, they're struggling more, so I can help, and that makes me feel good. I'm lucky that way. Like, I think a lot of people get ultimately everything we do. There's some philosophy for you. Ultimately, everything we do is selfish. You know, like everything we do, it makes you feel good. So I'm thankful that the things that make me feel good are helping other people, not like, you know, going around stabbing people and stuff. So
Yeah, thank goodness.
yeah.
Probably wouldn't have you on the podcast if you were going around stabbing.
That's fair.
You know,
I think
but
that's
even
fair.
if you did, you clearly have other talents. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Well, you don't get this far in life if all you do is stab people.
Fair.
I guess
Unless
I
you're
don't
an assassin, I guess.
Well,
like at the highest level.
Yeah, but I don't know. Are knives really what they use at that level?
I don't know.
I'm sure
I've
sometimes.
never been,
depending on-
you know,
How does
in
he,
that
how
world.
does he know so
so
much about assassins? I mean,
Okay.
Assassin's Creed.
Right,
perhaps.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Ubisoft.
and he did use knives. So
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, that's true.
all
That's
right.
a great point. That's a great point.
All right. Well, on that note, I feel like that's a good way to wrap it up. So thank you, Greg, so
Oh
much
man,
for
are you guys
joining
kidding? Thank
us.
you. This was an absolute pleasure.
Heck
Thank
yeah.
you so much. This was a blast, man. I really appreciate the invite, and
It was absolutely
time.
great having you. I think anyone in the Green Bay, DePere, Fox Cities area, if you are nearby in DePere, or even if you aren't and you want to make a trip to somewhere that means something to a lot of people in the community and gives back to the community, but most importantly, for your purposes, deals in video games. Come on down to Game Trade. There is a fantastic person there. You just might be able to meet.
shucks. Well, thank you.
Where can they follow you if they want to keep up
Sure.
on your journey?
Well, I'm slowly migrating away from Twitter, the site I refuse to call X, and but you can follow me on there at GameTradeGregg, Gregg with 2 G's at the end, and on Blue Sky it's GameTrade. I don't even know, like those like addresses like .bluesky.gov.gregg. something. I don't know, whatever
God.
it is, but just GameTradeGregg on Blue Sky.
We have an episode description, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Let's rock it.
I'll plug it in there.
All
too.
right.
But if you want to follow, the big thing is, you know, Facebook. You can
GameTrade.
follow our page. You
Yeah.
can follow GameTrade. Yeah. And look
you
up.
guys are super hasty on the responses. Just saying too. Whenever I message you,
Oh,
guys,
yeah.
it's just like, I'm like, oh,
So like,
nice.
Facebook is a pile. And so like when you have a page like that, it's constantly yelling at you. It's like, well, if you don't respond to your customers, we knock you down to like you respond occasionally. I'm like,
Oh,
well, no,
yeah,
we need to
yeah.
respond immediately.
Right.
And so then like even when you're closed, they'll send you a message be like, are you sure you don't want to follow up? I'm like, we're closed. We have the hours in Facebook, so they know when to
Right.
send the
Yeah.
customers the
Okay.
message saying that we're closed. And they're like, are you sure you don't want to respond? It's 2 a.m. on a Sunday. Like, are you sure you don't want to respond? I'm like, please stop.
Oh, my
I hate social media so much, but necessary evil.
Yep, it is.
Internet rules, social media sucks.
True.
Amen. Amen. Well, Greg, again, absolute pleasure. This has been Patch Notes, episode in the description. It's been a pleasure.
Peace.
If I didn't know they voted on it, I would have thought that this is just how you've always been.
I love meeting people for the first time when I have it like this, because they're like, this is how you'll always remember.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.